Okay, so you may ask, what do I need for today? A simple 3x3 square of watercolor paper, or just that much space in your journal. Watercolor paint, if you choose to do it with watercolor. That's up to you. Watercolor paint. Okay? There are different wells in your watercolor trays that you can mix paints in. So you would add water to those wells first, and then add the colors as you choose when you're mixing them. You would drop some water into each of those little cakes. That's what those colors are called, a cake. And you would add a little bit of water into it to soften it and help it become more liquidy so that you could work with it. You would then take the colors that you want, put them into the water that you have in each little section to mix the colors you want to work with. Okay, so that's your basic watercolor paint idea. And then we have what are called pearlized or glitter paints, depending on the company that you choose to use. So these, we're mostly working with white, a yellow, and a gold. Okay, some of them will have blues, greens. As you look through all my different images on Pinterest, you'll see that. These also have wells. There's a couple more wells to work with. It just depends on what tray that you use. Okay, the next item that you're going to need is a paint brush if you choose to do the watercolor. This is an aqua painter. An aqua painter opens up the opposite direction that most things that twist. And it has a control reservoir, and it has this space that you can fill with liquid. Okay, that liquid would be water. Now you're going to twist it back on opposite of the way you normally would twist something back on. You pull the tip off, and then you have your paintbrush, which makes it a lot more control. And you squeeze right here, and water comes down to the bottom. I don't know if you can see that that's actually water coming out. Okay, so that's what I use when I paint. Unless I need a big sloppy covering, then I'm going to use a regular paintbrush to cover the whole area. If you don't have one of those, a paint tray, a styrofoam plate, whatever you need, so you can mix a really watery, opaque background for today if you're using the watercolor technique. Okay, so you would fill your reservoirs with water, just not all the way. You don't want it to be like crazy. Just like, 20 drops in each. You don't really have to count them, I'm just saying. Okay, then you're going to want to have a paper towel of some kind that you can use to dab or wipe with. Okay, now that's if you're doing the watercolor aspect. The watercolor aspect will start with your 3x3 card, watercolor cardstock, or write on your journal. Be careful, some journals aren't thick enough to handle watercolor, so you'll want to test it first. And you are going to, after you mix the colors that you want to work with, you're going to fill your space with the color that you chose, and you're going to go just up and down, leaving a border around it. It might be kind of soggy. Let's say that you get this weird streaky line on one side. Squeeze some more water, thin it out. If necessary, wipe it off and try again. If you still can't get all of it off that you want to, you can dab it, take most of it off, and maybe work again. Depending on the quality of your watercolor paper will depend on how much it can handle you wiping it. Some watercolor paper is really cheap and it's not pressed tight together. So as you get the particles in the paper wet, sometimes they'll lift and separate and you'll get these little balls of paper. If that happens, stop and let it dry, because those particles are just going to keep lifting and create an issue for you. So just try to do it lightly. That's why I say fill the wells with water so that you get exactly the shade that you're looking for in your watercolor. Now put that aside, okay? And then just take a piece of paper or another part of your journal, and we're going to doodle a few things. Doodling, what is doodling? You're drawing without, like, it's more whimsical than anything, okay? So if you take a look here, I have different organic shapes that I've used, nothing crazy. If you're not real sure what to do, start with pencil. Draw really lightly, and then outline it with your water resistant ultra fine tip Sharpie marker or a micron, or like I use a micron that is like the teeniest thing on earth. I don't know if you can even see it. Like, it is so tiny. You could use a regular Sharpie marker that's like this. It's thicker. I don't know if you can see that. That's a little bit thicker. So you decide what you like, okay? If you just want to use a plain old pen, you can use a plain old pen. That's up to you. I'll tell you, you have more control and less bleeding occurring, and your lines are much finer when you use a nice, fine, tiny tip. I have this other one that I purchased that I got online. And this one is, I don't even know if I can get you to see it. It is so itty bitty. It is a 0.03. That one's a lot smaller, doesn't show up very well, so I don't use it very much unless I'm looking for close together details that I don't want to overlap. Anyway, that being said, you have many options of what you're going to draw with. Now when you're drawing, you want to make sure that today with this project, we're looking for just organic shapes. So I'm going to just show you a couple of different organic shapes. What does that mean? That means something that might be a little bit more whimsical. Hang on. I grabbed a pen that isn't working. That's not helpful. Sorry about that. So I want something a little more whimsical. Let's say I choose to do something like a leaf. Super easy, nothing major, right? What if I want to do something a little more interesting, like overlapping, arching lines, some that don't quite reach each other, and some that are different lengths. And then I want to add circles to them. Okay, I don't really have anything in mind, but remember I'm going to add color to them. I probably don't want to do them too close. Sorry, I keep bumping the camera. It's my first time doing this, so bear with me. Notice how I'm not doing them all on the same side, and they're not perfect. Some are little, some are big, and I might do a few just floating around. Because if it's organic, it might be some type of plant that has little pieces falling. Okay? So these are the types of things I'm talking about. Organic shapes. Organic is an unstructured, it's a undefined structure or undefined shape. It doesn't necessarily have a plan, doesn't fit into the norm. Very much like our church, right? It's organic all the time. We love it. Okay, so let's say that you're choosing today to not use the watercolor. Well, that's fine, and that's what you can work with. However, if you are choosing to do the watercolor, you will have already done the color part, letting it dry. Okay, if you want to, you can even tape it down with masking tape just to keep it from rolling up, which it can do. Not to worry, because you can always stick it between two books. Or if it curls up too much for you, depending on the quality of your paper, you can flip it over, put parchment paper underneath it, lay this down, another piece of parchment paper, and iron it. And you can make it flat again. If I was going to do that, I'd wait till the very end when I was finished. Okay? So let's say that you were working on this piece, and now you decide that you're going to put your organic shapes on your piece. So now I'm just going to go ahead and line, drawing them with my fine tip marker, one at a time, the way you just saw me do it. But this time I put it on top of the dried watercolor. It needs to be completely dry. You could use a heat gun, a blow dryer, anything like behind it, whatever you want to do to dry it faster. But the paper needs to be dry. If it feels cold on the back, the paper probably isn't dry yet, okay? So I have this done, and I'm going to put that aside because I decided I'm going to work on my piece that has just the drawing on it and no watercolor. Okay? And let's say I want to use a glitter gel pen because I don't have paints I have to work with today. So let's say I choose to do that. So I'm going to take my gel pen, and gel pens you want to work really lightly with and not necessarily straight up and down all the time. You kind of got to figure out how that gel pen's going to work. Okay? So just keep coloring it. Try not to go over the same space more than once. You can create another unwanted line. Gel pens that have glitter are beautiful. Lindsay usually has them at retreat, which I love. The ladies love the glitter gel pens. Lindsay need new ones all the time. Trust me, they use them up really fast. We used these when we had the women's Bible study, and we did some doodle art. It's fun to work with them, with that little bit of sparkle, without having to add glitter, because I know a lot of us like the appearance, but we don't like to be near glitter, just because it's messy, and that's okay. And I'm not doing super big strokes, I'm doing kind of small, so I make sure I cover the whole area. Now I'm going to pick it up and see, did I miss a spot? See, I have quite a few white spots that I couldn't see because of the glare of the light. So I might go over those again. Okay? You decide what you want to work with. Okay? So I'm going to put that aside. That's something you guys can work with if that's your choice. So I'm letting all that other stuff dry. That's why we're moving on to another piece. Now let's say I want to do a bunch of doodles and I want to use my gel pens. Well, I can doodle a bunch of different pieces on one, and then use the gel pens, the glitter gel pens. Oh, they're so pretty. See how they shimmer with the right light? Even the white shows up on that top one. And then there's this metallic black gray. When you add metallic to black, it turns gray naturally. And then there's that tiny bit of green, and then the dark one again. Absolutely beautiful. So you could do that up in the corner of a journal, along the side of a journal, maybe ending a sentence. So those are a lot of fun. If you're using watercolor, like you want to do a bunch of them and make the whole page like this, you could do those watercolor splotches all over. See, there's a yellow, kind of a dark red, and kind of a burnt orange, and I only use 3 colors at a time. Okay? So with that in mind, then I would go ahead, after it dries completely, do my pen work. See how my pen work is done? This one is with a chubbier pen, that one's with a thinner pen. And then I add my glitter paint to it, the pearl or glitter paint. You might hear my dog in the background slurping up some water. Okay, so now you've completed your watercolor, it's dry. You did your pen work or pencil work if you were working with the watercolor. And let's say you happen to have glitter or pearl paints. So the glitter or pearl paints will give you this. So the opacity is less on glitter paint. It has to be glitter watercolor or pearl watercolor paints, or it won't work on the watercolor. It'll peel right off. But that's all you're going to need: watercolor paper, watercolor paints, a water resistant pen that's super fine, and the metallic or pearlized watercolor paints. You could use these on top of a card. Let's say I had this card that I was making and I want to add my image to it. Then I could add anything else to it. That's a great idea too, isn't it? So let's say we're making cards for the as a gift, okay? So I could elevate my finished piece on a card, and then I could write words right here. So that would be a really neat way to utilize this artwork that you've created. Well, that's about it for what I have for you. If you're wondering about the gel pens, I just get them on Amazon. The paints I get on Amazon as well. I have a specialty company that I use once in a while when I want to spend a bit of money on nicer stuff, but you don't have to. You can get these looks with only buying the stuff from the store, okay? You do not have to spend a ton of money. And if you don't want to work with watercolors and you just want to use paper, a nice ultra fine tip marker, and glitter gel pens, you can. So that's what I have for you today. Let me pray with you. Lord, I thank you for this opportunity to work with my hands to create interesting images and to share that with others. The joy that comes to my heart when someone realizes they created something with their own 2 hands is a joy that only comes from you. I know that. So Father, I thank you for that. I ask you to bless each person that is watching today. And if you're rewatching this, that's okay too. I want to make sure that you leave comments for me. Let me know what else you want to do, or if you'd like me to go into detail about something else. So I'm going to sign off here. These are your images, and have a blessed day.